So we're joined here with questions for candidates with Mayor John Engen, who is running for re-election. And John, thanks for being with us this morning to talk about a few issues and things that are going on here in this campaign as you run for re-election.
My pleasure. Thanks for having
me. Let's talk about taxes. That seems to be on everybody's mind as we get reevaluations and things come through, and bond issues are delivered and those kind of things. People looking at those tax bills a little bit, and sometimes they're a little bit stunned this time around, because we've had library bond, we had the Missoula County Public School, Fort Missoula Regional Park, all those kind of hitting at the same time. When you look at the tax issue, how are you kind of viewing where we're at in terms of Missoula? How are we doing on this issue?
Well, we're in the middle of the road in terms of the state. And one of the things I try to remind folks is that the city of Missoula is roughly a third of your tax bill. The rest is county and schools. In fact, the lion's share is schools. We work pretty diligently every day to make sure that the investment that we ask folks to make in our community through taxes is used effectively. And the lion's share of what we spend money on is public safety. We make sure that we have adequate police and fire protection, that when you call 911, you're guaranteed that somebody is going to show up and take care of business. Most of what we invest in at the city of Missoula is people. Those are the folks who are on the ground doing the job every day, and we also invest in materials and equipment. What we have been able to do this year, because I think of a lot of hard work on the part of the broad community, we've grown tax base. And when Missoula grows, everyone gets to share in the reward. When I don't have a growing tax base and I need to continue to deliver services, we look at what I consider modest increases in property taxes. But this year, because we have a growing community and a growing tax base, we actually lowered taxes a little bit. My sense is that we're going to be able to do that for the foreseeable future. A lot of the hard work that folks have done is really paying off. We recognized about half of the growth that we expect to see next year, and that goes to the bottom line and serving the community.
So some feeling that this will sort of even out, because I know a lot of people have talked to me and they said, gee, my taxes went up $4,000 this year, and a lot of that's driven by bond issues.
Right.
But some feeling that we're hitting a little bit of a more comfortable plateau for people.
That's my sense of things, and we live in an extraordinarily generous and engaged community. And when the question is put to voters whether they want to invest in their community through schools, through parks bonds, through open space bonds, through library bonds, the majority of citizens say yes. So they're willing to make that investment. Our job at the city of Missoula is to make sure that we balance needs and wants in that investment. Balancing act is tough, but frankly, barring new revenue, we don't have a lot of choices. The beauty is we've got new revenue.
I know that this time around I've heard a lot of rocks being thrown at the TIF programs, the tax increment financing, and there seems to be a general feeling out there that somehow this is sort of geographically isolating that revenue. So if you have a TIF that's in an urban area, somehow people in the Rattlesnake or Miller Creek aren't seeing the benefits of that revenue, sort of capping that in a particular area. How do you feel about TIF as a tool for us?
TIF is the single most powerful economic development tool that's available to municipalities and counties in the state of Montana. And but for TIF, but for our ability to make those investments, we wouldn't be growing the tax base the way we are. The beauty of TIF is that at the end of the day, at the end of those districts, we in effect have a windfall of investment that wouldn't have happened otherwise. The notion that all of the economic activity, all of the development that is happening today would happen without TIF, I believe, is a fallacy. TIF helps people tip over, right? It helps close gaps on projects. The best example I have of that is South Crossing. We had an empty Kmart and a vast parking lot, and there was nothing happening there. When we connected with that developer, when we showed that developer what we could do with TIF revenue, what we were able to do was expand the scope of that project considerably, and now there are more people working on that acreage than have ever worked before. The taxable value of that acreage is higher than it's ever been, and when that TIF district expires, all of that new revenue will drop to the general fund. So this is early investment in doing more, and that more ends up paying great dividends down the road.
Let's talk about streets. That's always a popular topic, not just in Missoula, but it seems like everywhere in Montana. And we have had a number of upgrades, bridges, DOT's doing things, city working in conjunction. But a lot of people are worried about those side streets. They're dodging potholes and one thing and another. How do you feel where we're at in terms of that secondary infrastructure when it comes to streets?
So this year we've been able to actually invest more in maintenance, more both in terms of time and in terms of materials. And we've had a change of philosophy at the City of Missoula. We're largely getting out of the construction business. We've done some of that over time for a couple of reasons. One is that it has been less expensive, and therefore we were able to get some projects done that wouldn't otherwise have gotten done. But by virtue of new gas tax, by virtue of the fact that we funded an additional employee in the streets department, we are really going to focus on maintenance in the future. This year we've budgeted for our first ever comprehensive streets infrastructure inventory, so we'll know the condition of all of our streets and we'll be able to set clear priorities. In the past we've done that through basically a windshield tour. Mm-hmm. We're going to be a lot more systematic about that, and we also have some new revenue to invest. What we've seen over the course of this construction season is more activity than we've really been able to afford or do over the course of the last dozen years, and a lot of that has to do with this change in philosophy and taking advantage of opportunities when they arise.
When we talk about the homeless issue, and of course we launched the affordable housing study of those kinds of things. How do you feel? We still see problems with, challenges out there downtown, people under the Reserve Street Bridge, those kinds of things. Where do you feel we're at on that? Are we making some progress and some headway?
I believe we are making progress, and I look at this, I separate homelessness and transient activity. Homelessness is a function of poverty, addiction, mental illness, and circumstance. And our 10-year plan to end homelessness is really about addressing those barriers to housing. These are folks who, if they had their druthers and resources, would be living in a stable place. These are kids who are sleeping on a couch because mom or dad they've lost their job, they've had a devastating medical condition. The list goes on. So we're working on housing affordability and making sure that those folks have access to safe, decent housing. On the transient side of things, on the aggressive folks who are panhandling, who are taking advantage of the generosity of Missoulians, folks who are here really to prey on the public. We've made investment in both policing and scheduling so that we're paying more attention. We've got more eyes and ears on the street. We've got more resources applied, to the point that I had a business owner this summer who had extraordinarily, well, he had a rough time at his business, came to see me. We spent some time with the police chief, and through cooperation and investment, both through the downtown business improvement district and our own resources, we've been able to deploy officers in a way that's made quite a difference downtown. Fundamentally, if you visit any urban area, you're going to see a lot of what you see in Missoula. We're at a scale where we do our best to manage, and we believe that, again, through this continued investment, always looking at our policies and procedures and our deployment, we can continue to make a positive difference.
I know a lot of people are concerned, rather shocked. We had a pretty gruesome murder case that came up here this summer. We've had kind of an uptick in drug-related crimes of late, some of those with a lot of violence involved. How safe is Missoula? Do you still have some lingering concerns here?
I lose sleep over a number of things. What I don't lose sleep over is police response to violence. It is very difficult to prevent the kind of crimes that we're seeing when people have access to drugs, alcohol, and we do our best around that. Drug use is epidemic in our country. I count alcohol as one of those drugs. We generally know who's engaged in these activities. We generally keep a pretty good eye on these folks, and sometimes stuff will happen that's extraordinarily unfortunate. I believe Missoula is a safe place. It's a place where I think folks can stroll in the dark and feel relatively comfortable, but we're all in this together, right? We have to be cautious, we have to be diligent, we need to make sure we don't take unnecessary risks.
Let's talk finally, one of the things I want to touch on was especially economic development, and there have been some studies that say, you know, Bozeman's booming and all these things are going on, and I don't know if it's a Grizz cat thing. We're always comparing ourselves to Bozeman. Right. Certainly there's some differences, but there are some similarities. Yeah. How are we doing in terms of that bigger economic picture? I know we have, you know, a number of projects, some hotels coming online, potential of the Riverfront Triangle project coming through. How are we doing when you judge against our Montana neighbors?
So when I look at fundamental metrics, one is development, right? So Missoula is coming off a year of record development with what I believe will be another year of record development. All of that is an indication of folks' confidence in our economy, in the quality of our place. So there are more people living and working in Missoula today. There's more development activity than there's been in my entire lifetime in Missoula. And I don't see an end to that in sight. What we've done through our many planning processes, what we've done through trying to run a solid government that provides the services that create a foundation for a great community to thrive, is that folks are willing to invest here and they have faith in that investment.
I know that, and final question on sort of spinning off on that, getting back to the housing issue, I know though there are some people who say, you know, I can't afford a house in Missoula, and they're starting to look at Lola, or they're starting to look at Frenchtown, or those things. Is there any concern that the growth might be heading us down a road where many of those people do have to live outside to be able to afford to work here?
We would be heading down that road if we weren't being intentional about housing. So we tipped up a housing office at the city of Missoula, first one ever. We did that about a year and a half ago. We're working we're working hand in glove with the organization of realtors to understand what the gaps in the housing market are, what the needs are, and what that difference is between wages and cost of housing. And I believe through intentional development, intentional investment, we can make a difference. Other communities have done that, and I think we're on our way to doing that. When we take advantage of existing infrastructure in the urban core, when we plan correctly, when we have transportation plans that work in conjunction with land use plans, we start to see what we need to do to move the needle. When we look at downtown Missoula, for example, we'll have another 400 folks living downtown, students who live in proximity to their work, in effect, which is the University of Montana. We believe that there's tremendous potential for additional development, both in downtown Missoula and within existing neighborhoods.
Great. John, thanks for being with us, spending a few minutes touching on some of the issues. We encourage everybody, of course, though, to go to the candidates' website and the various forums and appearances before you cast your ballot so you can make up your choice in this race. John, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.